They say about our climate. What's going on with the climate?
My teacher sent a whole long message through about that the other day. What he was saying, I'll just try and encapsulate it. He said because Earth plane humanity has been so strongly patriarchal for so long, it's thrown the balance of the planet out because we're part of planet Earth, we're intrinsically linked in with nature, and so this is behind a lot of the unnatural heating up of the planet because yang polarity represents heat. Yin and yang are simply polarities, they're opposites. So yang is hot, yin's cold. Yang's day, yin's night. Yang is male, yin is female.
That's fascinating, Judy. I've never heard it expressed like that.
Because of the over-patriarchalness of the planet, it's reached a level of complete imbalance, and that's what's causing climate problems.
Okay, so...
You got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
Welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain. As always, wonderful to be with you again. I have, and remember to like and subscribe and all that good stuff. You know, I say this at the beginning of most shows because when people say it, you usually do it. I always forget to tell people, like, subscribe, sign up to the newsletter. Let me introduce you to a beautiful, wonderful woman, Judy Carroll. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Karen. Lovely to be here.
I met Judy a couple of years ago. We were up in Byron together. Catherine and Mick were putting on conferences. There was the Afterlife Explorers, and then there was the UFO conference. What was it called? Close Contact?
Oh, yes, Contact, I think.
One of those. Anyway, you were speaking. I saw your talk there. It was a great talk. And yeah. I think that as you were coming down the stairs, I sort of stopped you and I said, I loved what you have to say. I have to put you on the show. So it's taken a few years. But we're here now. Here we are.
We've actually met up again.
Taken a few years. But listen, Judy sent me her bio. It's a long bio, but I love it. I think that it's great. It's really going to explain what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to read the whole thing. So here we go. Judy Carroll was born in Queensland, Australia. Her family background is from Creole, South American/Spanish. English and Romani Gypsy. This is wonderful. I love this. She left school to pursue a career as a professional flamenco dancer, following in the footsteps of her grandmother, who was a dancer and clairvoyant medium in the Romani tradition. Judy feels that this background has helped her to assimilate the encounters she had with the grey ETs since her early childhood. 60 years of these ongoing and at the time fully conscious encounters has given her a deep insight into the phenomena which is happening to many thousands of people across the world. And being born into a Romani family, she also gives her insight into being different amongst fellow humans, and which is the effect. It has an effect on the psyche. A full awakening and contact with ETs came in 1983 at the age of 30, with a daytime encounter during which several greys appeared to her in full daylight, and she recognized them as family. She was given a massive download of information and advised regarding the mission being carried out on Earth, the part that she was to play in it, and further studies she needed to do in order to undertake this role to the best of her ability. The visitors advised her to meditate, to facilitate easier telepathic communication, to study Tai Chi and natural healing. So Judy did 8 years of training in meditation development groups where she learned channeling, automatic writing, and 6 years of training in Reiki to master level. Judy has been a qualified Tai Chi and Qigong instructor for over 30 years. In 1995, another encounter at a sacred site occurred in the UK where a long needle with a crystal on the end was inserted into your brow chakra point. The purpose of this was another major download of information where she was asked by her ET family to write a book on ET Earth-human contact, but from the ET perspective. She fulfilled this mission when A Human by Day, Zeta by Night was published. The book Human by Day, Zeta by Night was published in 2011. In 2000, Judy was led to find a final piece to another book when Helene Kay contacted her asking for assistance for her family who was going through an intense and frightening at the time paranormal experiences. This activity turned out to be genuine extraterrestrial contact aimed specifically at the two children of the family, during which a second grade teacher made his presence known through Helene's daughter. This connection led both women to understand their deep connection, and they co-authored the book The Zeta Message. Not long after these books were released in 2011, Judy attended a meeting on an ET ship that involved a discussion on the past and present situation on Earth, including the hijacking of the planet many millennia ago. In light of this, a third book was suggested to cover the ET history of Earth, the hijacking and of the planet by a rebel force, and the subsequent manipulation of scriptural accounts of events that took place in the distant past. The book is The Extraterrestrial Presence on Earth. Lessons in histories, details are given of how this subtle manipulation of human minds continues to this day. Judy's full comprehension that she was the blended soul surfaced at around this time, which allowed her to be consciously aware of both her human and Zeta aspects. You can find Judy's website. You can find Judy at her website, which is ufograyinfo.com.
Yes.
At the end of the show, we can go now. So that outlines your story, and it's quite an amazing story. Let's hear it from your perspective. What was the first? So it said here at 83, at the age of 30. Let's go into this daylight encounter. What happened?
Yes, it was very interesting. Up until that time, I was aware of having contact with non-human beings. But in Australia at that time, nobody had heard of Greys. There was no things here like Roswell event in America, so no one was familiar with this sort of thing at all. And I was brought up in a family. They were a very open family spiritually, but they weren't into ETs. I mean, we just never discussed that thing. It wasn't part of our world. But I was aware of these beings who were around me, and even from the age of 15, I had a few experiences, and I had got into the habit of calling on one of them, who I thought of as a devic being, because, as I say, I knew he wasn't human. So this is how I thought of him. And I got into the habit of calling on him for help, and I was very aware of him being around me. But on this particular day in 1983, I was married by then and living on acreage with my husband and all our animals. And my husband's family were visiting for the day. And in the afternoon, I started feeling a little bit off, like I was coming down with the flu. And I excused myself to go upstairs to a quiet bedroom at the back of the house and lie down. And I became aware of this paralysis feeling through my body, which I had had before. But on this occasion, it was a little bit different because there was this loud, roaring, buzzing sound in my head, to such a point it was giving me a headache. So I lay down on the bed, and I was actually feeling quite scared, and I was aware of starting to go into another state. And the next thing I became aware of was about three of like beings standing beside the bed. I mean, I didn't think of them as greys back then because I'd never heard of greys, didn't know what they were supposed to look like, but I could see they weren't human, and now I realise they were greys. Anyway, they began communicating with me, and they were so physically real. They were blocking out light coming in through the window. This was mid-afternoon, and they were blocking out light coming in through the window. And we had a long conversation. And during this conversation, they actually joked with me. They said, "Oh, you've been hiding yourself out here long enough, out on the acreage property. Time for you to get back to work." I was sort of, what work? What are you talking about? So they started explaining to me about my blended soul, that this was a role that I'd chosen, like a pre-birth choice coming into this life, and that my job was to be like an ambassador between them and Earth humans. And having a blended soul, I was able to have conscious experiences from both sides. So I'm consciously aware of being an Earth human, but after this experience, I also became consciously aware of working up on the ship as a grey. And I've had a few interesting experiences up there in that role. So anyway, they explained all this to me, and they told me that I needed to learn to meditate. Now, as you read in the bio, I'd been a professional dancer, and I'm a flamenco dancer of all things. So in one way, this is good, because there's in flamenco, when you're dancing, you go into sort of a trance state if it's being done properly. And the term they use in Spanish is duende, which means like spirit. You go into this slightly altered state, but at the same time you've got to stay physically aware, because, you know, the footwork and the guitar is playing castanets. So it's almost like right from that early age I was trained in left and right brain operation, carrying out two things like left and right brain at the same time. But the disadvantage was, because it was such a physical thing, I found meditation hard. I had tried it a couple of times and just couldn't get into it. So the Gray family, who I recognised, as soon as I saw them, I remember, "Oh, I know you, you're family, there's nothing to be scared of." And their advice was to take up Tai Chi, which again back then I'd never heard of. I think I had a vague idea of it, but very, very little. And they explained to me it's like yoga, except there's more movement, and it's going to be a good bridge for you between being a dancer and learning to meditate. They said also you'll be taking up a natural healing technique one of these days, and in the future you'll be teaching these to people. So, of course, again, I started to panic a bit, because I had no idea of any of this they were talking about. Oh, how can I teach? I don't even know what it is. They said to me, you need to move from the acreage, you need to come back into the city, so you're close to people and, can access classes. So over the next 3 years, it took about 3 years for all this to sort of come through in my mind, and weird opportunities and coincidences arose in that we did end up moving back to the city, which we had no intention of doing. So from there, one coincidence after another happened. There happened to be Tai Chi classes just starting the following week around the corner from when we moved in. Some people came up as neighbours the woman had trained in meditation for 10 years, and her friend, who was her teacher down south, had also come up here to Queensland, and she was going to start a meditation group, and I was invited out of the blue to join this group, and it was a closed circle, and I'd never meditated in my life. Invited to join a closed circle, which was quite amazing. And in the process of all this happening, I also was training in Tai Chi. Took me a couple of years to train to teacher level, so I got the opportunity to teach there. I was in the meditation group for about, I think it was 8 years, during which time I learned automatic writing, which was of huge help when I came to write the books. But at that point, I knew nothing of that. And a fellow joined my Tai Chi class who was a Reiki channel, and Reiki was fairly new back then in the 1980s, and he'd learned Reiki. And I had learned spiritual healing in the group, but I could feel the difference of the energy. His energy in his hands was much stronger than some of the professional healers in the group who were good healers. So I thought, okay, I've got to look into this. So he ended up going on to become a Reiki master, so I was able to learn through him. So this is how I got into Tai Chi, Reiki and meditation. And since then, I have been teaching Tai Chi, as you say now, for over 30 years. I've been teaching Reiki since 2000. And, of course, the Tai Chi is a wonderful form of meditation. And I also learned to meditate in the group.
Do you tell all your students about your dual soul? Like, do you say,
Very, very few of them.
Really?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because I've actually met up with several other greys down here. Helene, the one who co-authored the Zeta message with me, she's one of our group who we've worked together in a past life, which is why we immediately recognised each other. As soon as she rang me asking for help with the children, we recognised each other. And we've since met another friend also, and I have a few friends over in America also, and we were all part of a group up there in the past life.
Well, yeah, I think there's lots of you down here, really. Lots and lots. I want to get into that. Look, there was something that you said about the noise you felt, because I was watching last night, I was watching this guy talk about, being an astral projector. He said, I'm going to give you 8 tips on how to do it. And he was talking about his experience, the first experience he had when he was trying to get out of his body. And he said that he heard this noise like a jet engine noise. And I'm like, really? What was the noise? And then you said you heard this noise.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that when the Greys first contacted you, you're actually out of your physical body and in an astral body. Look, when you're in your astral body, it's so real. It feels like your physical body. Some people don't even know that they're out of their physical body.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened, because I could see them, but my eyes were closed. Right. So obviously I was operating through my third eye, and it was clearer than, looking normally. And I think that this loud buzzing sound is when you're being lifted up out of the body. I think it's the sound of the astral plane.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like, I don't know, when you were a child, I used to play a game. I used to put my hands over my ears and take them away, and you sort of hear the sound, and then it disappears, and it comes in again.
Oh, actually, that sounds familiar. It's something I might have done, actually. It sounds very familiar. I don't know. I don't have full memory of it, but... So, okay, all right, okay. What fascinates me is the agenda. So apart from you, they wanted you to be down here to, teach and tell people about, how to... Meditation is a way that we can try and get a hold of these crazy human minds that we've got, try and focus the mind. Yes. A lot of people say to me, in my sessions and in the groups, that they can't meditate because they can't focus their mind. But it sounds to me like doing Tai Chi or Qigong, what the other one, this moving meditation for people that have these crazy minds, that might be a better way to sort of focus their mind better. If they're moving their body, it might help them.
Yeah. It's actually a very, very good way of doing it. I have a lot of students. I teach at a couple of senior citizen centres. In one class I have about 30 odd students, and another one about 15 or so. And some people get it and some don't. For some it's just a physical exercise, and that's fine, because Tai Chi is brilliant for the body. Even though it's gentle, it works the body very hard. But for those who understand the mind focus aspect of it, it takes it to a whole new level. As I always tell my students, what my teacher used to tell me, with Tai Chi it's about that wide but about that deep. There's so much involved in it when you get into the mind side of it. And yes, when you're doing it to that level, you become very, very focused, and you can actually feel the chi coming into your hands as sort of a tingling sensation.
Yeah.
It's through your body. It's absolutely beautiful.
I've seen amazing people do things with chi, like these superhuman, like comic book type stories that we have where people can sort of like zap you and all that. So I've actually seen people do that with chi. I just, there was this healer, this guy said he mixes the yin and the yang energy in his solar plexus, and he projects it out his hands, and he can light fires and stuff. It's amazing. But anyway, let's get back to the Zetas, because so it sounds to me, okay, they wanted you to come and be a benefit to humanity, so teach them healing, teach them meditation, but it sounds like they're trying to correct. They're like they're coming back into this timeline. Because they're trying to correct something that happened in another timeline. Something about this part that you said about the, what was it, the subtle manipulation of humans.
Yeah, the hijacking of the planet.
The hijacking. Can you go into that a bit more? What's that all about?
Yes, the planet was actually hijacked by a group who were developed down here by an off-planet reptilian group. I'm pretty sure it was the Draconians. They came down here to develop a human race, and it was around the time of the dinosaurs. So this human race, as opposed to modern man, who was developed out of a primate, this earlier human race was developed out of a saurian-type biped. So I refer to them in my book, Extraterrestrial Presence on Earth, I refer to them as the Repterans, because I want to differentiate between them and the reptilians. There's a lot of negative stuff put out about the poor old reptilians, and the majority of reptilians are lovely, lovely people. I know a couple of them down here, and they often take on roles, protective roles, like in the police force. I know of one who's a specialist, a heart specialist doctor. They're very, very much into healing. So I like to differentiate between the goodies and the reptarians who were actually developed as an early Earth human race down here, some of whom really did fall off the track, as most cultures have done at some stage. You know, we've all been there, done that.
Well, the thing about contrast is that what I find interesting in the human perspective, the human collective, is that humans like go, oh, bad, terrible, oh, terrible, terrible, let's fight against it. But yet, as a soul, we come to a polarized, contrasting planet like Earth to experience contrast. So then we get here and we say, oh, it's so terrible, it's so terrible. But the thing is that, you know, this negative timeline or negative stream of consciousness or whatever you want to call it, you know, it serves a purpose in creating contrast so that souls that don't have contrast can come and have it. So they serve their purpose. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, how can you know good if you don't experience bad? I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, go on. So these Reptarians, how do you say?
Repterans. You know, terror, T-E-R-R is Earth.
The Repterans. Oh, so the reptilians born on Earth. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So what was their agenda? Why are they nasty?
Well, basically what they did, they were the ones who went on to create modern man, but they were created as a slave race, which wasn't the way things were supposed to go. I mean, when you're in the creative business, you create a race and then you allow them to evolve, which is, you know, the correct way to do in creating humans. But they didn't. They decided to take control. They wanted to control the planet, and so they held back the development of humans. Or I should say they interfered with the development of humans, because there were other ETs also at the time assisting in this project. And the Reptarian group is spoken of as Lucifer appearing in the Garden of Eden, interfering with Adam and Eve. That's a biblical analogy for it. They actually interfered with the developing DNA of modern man. And so what's happened, it's stopped modern man from evolving to higher levels. One of the Grey teachers once described it that it's like the universe is a river, a fast-flowing river, and planet Earth has been sort of washed to the side into a stagnant pool, and people can't move past this. And it's because of this hijacking that happened all those many millions of years ago that has stopped mankind from moving on.
So the DNA was hijacked, and it sounds to me like instead of our psychic intuitive abilities developing, they were kind of pulled back. Yes. The DNA was sort of switched off.
DNA is intrinsically linked in to our amount of conscious awareness.
Yeah,
now,
absolutely.
Because planet Earth is right down at the bottom of what the Greys refer to as the human ladder, we can only access about 10% of our potential conscious awareness. Whereas those ones right up the top, that say, for example, we think of as angels, they're able to access 100% conscious awareness. Mm-hmm. Now, the DNA is intrinsically linked into that. So by interfering with the DNA, they've blocked humans' ability to become consciously aware of more further dimensions. And this is why we're locked up in third dimension and unable to move past it. And this is the reason mainly why people are taken up on the ships, to have their DNA repaired. And this is the reason why many people who have ET contact find themselves becoming more sensitive psychically, more environmentally sensitive, etc., because their DNA is being upgraded.
You know, the powers that be that are overlooking the evolution of the human consciousness and knocking themselves out trying to upgrade this DNA in any way they can, you know, like through healing sessions, through sending all these light weavers or wanderers or light workers to Earth, through giving people near-death experiences, through getting teachers on Earth teaching, you know, all manner of healing. And I first heard about it in my 30s. Somebody rang up and said, "Do you want to do a DNA course?" And I said, "What?" I said, "What's that?" And he started talking, and I just got this like, "Yep, you're going." And he's talking, and I go, "You can stop talking." And he goes, "Well, let me tell you, it's this and this." And I go, "No, stop talking. I'm coming." And it was, you know, it was a healing course about all this stuff. And
yeah, that's right.
So they're doing their best to try and rectify this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting you're talking about this, because this is another very interesting comment that one of the ETs made. On a lot of interviews I've been asked, and I know this is a common question people put, why don't the ETs just come down here and land on the White House lawn and fix everything for us? And so I asked Maris, my grade teacher, I said, look, what's a good answer for this? Because everyone's asking me. And he said, look, tell people to look on it this way. He said, you look at a football team and their coach. The coach can mentor them before the game, they train them and they teach them as much as they possibly can. But when that team runs out onto the field to play, the coach has to stand on the sidelines. He can jump up and down, he can swear, he can tear his hair out, but he's not allowed to run out on the field and help them.
He's powerless.
He's powerless.
Standing on the sidelines screaming. I'm sure the angels, the ETs, and they all stand on the sidelines.
And then, of course, he went on to joke. He said, why do you think us greys don't have any hair? He said, this is all out of frustration.
That's hilarious. That's absolutely hilarious. Oh, my God. Look, one of the most fascinating conversations I've had on the show was with Susie Hansen. I'm sure you know Susie.
Oh, love Susie, yeah.
And she spoke about the Greys having this sense of humour.
Oh.
But you know, some of the things she spoke about, what goes on the ships. Do you have memory of what goes on the ships, like some of the technology?
We tease each other all the time. Like, I'm very close friends with two Greys who were up there and down here. We give each other upset hell down here. We're always teasing each other. Dreadful tease. One of them was actually my sibling in a past life, and so, you know, the teasing's been carried over. But look, we have great fun up there.
When you go up on the ship, do you kind of leave your physical body on Earth and like take your consciousness to the ship and like slip it into a grey form, or do you?
Yeah. I actually saw myself do this one night. I got up out of my physical body, because I tend to go up there at night when I'm sleeping down here, because I'm sort of doing grey work in both down here and up there, because I'm doing Tai Chi and Reiki here and working up on the ship. So I allowed my human body to sleep at night. In fact, I have to be in bed by about 9 o'clock, because then I'm late for work. And one time they came looking for me when I was running late. That's another story. But yes, this particular night I got up out of my body and happened to look in the mirror. And I'm still in my human form. And I don't know, have you ever left your body and looked down at your human form?
I haven't, Judy. It's an endless frustration. I've had plenty of out-of-body projections, but I'm always doing something. I'm always off, you know, doing something. I've never had the experience of looking back at my sleeping body. Anyway.
Yeah, well, my advice is don't.
Oh, okay.
Because I've heard from several people, I experienced this myself, seeing my human form in the mirror almost gave me a fright. It was, oh my God, you know, you look funny.
I think that every time I look in the mirror, it wouldn't change you.
But then the next thing happened, I shape-shifted. And when I'm in my grey form, I often wear a black robe with a hood. And I could see my grey face inside this black hood. And my first reaction was, oh, that's why people get scared when they see me. That does look a bit weird. And then my second reaction, oh, he has a grey face. Oh, phew, that looks better. And of course, by doing that, I gave myself the giggles, and then, you know, I lost consciousness after that. I must have just zipped upstairs. But it was such an interesting experience to look in the mirror and see this change happen.
Wow. So it's interesting that you were looking in the mirror. So you were actually in a physical form then. You weren't in an astral form. I'm sure
Well,
if you're in an
what it is everything's multidimensional. So, you know, the bedroom, even the mirror, everything's operating.
Oh, okay. So you're kind of in an astral, right. Okay, yeah.
Because you're in the astral at that point. And
At that point, you're in an astral world. So that astral mirror is going to see the astral form, right? Okay. So do you have much memory of what happens when you're up on the ships?
Yes, I don't have a huge amount of memory, because what I figure is what we do up there is so far beyond our 10% human consciousness. A lot of it I can't bring back. But I do have one very, very clear memory that I've spoken of on a number of interviews, but, you know, I always like to cover it because we've always had new people listening in. I remember walking into a room up on the ship, and there was a man lying on the bed, like in the healing clinic area.
Yeah.
And he was partly paralysed, but he managed to move his eyes enough to see me. And the look of terror, absolute sheer terror on his face, was quite, you know, disconcerting. And I tried very hard to communicate with him, but we don't use verbal communication up there. We use telepathy. And because he was in such a state of fear, the fear was sort of wrapped around him like a cocoon, and I couldn't get through it. And I was literally yelling at him telepathically, look, I'm not going to hurt you. Calm down. You've been here before. Don't you remember? There's no way I could get through. So we ended up putting him out completely, because, I mean, we felt sorry for the poor fellow. So we put him out, anaesthetised him with their hands. And there's a group down here known as MyLabs, Military Abduction Group. And they'd actually got hold of him. He was having genuine encounter experiences with us, but he was also having experiences with this other group who were giving him negative experiences, hence a lot of the fear. And we had to remove an implant from his brain that this negative group had put in, and three of us were standing around his head, and I remember as clear as day putting my long grey fingers down into his head and disconnecting this thing and removing it, turning to one of the others standing beside me and saying, oh, that's good, he should be protected now, we've got that out, and feeling this big relief.
You know, I'm thinking, isn't it funny? People could be abducted and have these abduction experiences. You could have been one of the greys talking to them. I was to meet my abductor in the human form. I mean, it's just mind-boggling, isn't it?
Oh, it has happened. Like, some of my Reiki students have experienced meeting me up there.
Okay.
Helene's daughter, when they were having all these scary experiences in their home, she ended up becoming very close friends with a tall grey by the name of Horus. And she and I used to go up on the ship at night, and I'd be like a mentor to her. And she got to know me both in my human form and in my grey form. And she got to realise that, look, you know, she's no different. Up there it's Judy, it's the same as down here. And this really helped to reassure her a lot.
So let's talk a little bit about the grey race, because there's a lot of fear around it, that they're robots or they're negative or they're abducting people and hurting people. You know, Hollywood's done a really good hack job of, what's that movie called, Signs, that...
that's right, about the crop circles.
Yeah, what's his name made that movie? They call him an Australian, but I think he was actually born in the States. He grew up here in Australia and went back to the States. What's his name, that actor that made it? Anyway, the same guy that made the one about Jesus on the cross. Anyway, he's famous. Can't think of his name. I'm good with names.
Yeah, I know who you mean. I can't think of his name.
Yeah, and it was the movie started so great, you know, with the crop circles and everything, and then it just became a horror movie, and they depicted these greys coming down to eat the humans, and so are there negative greys? Like, what, I know that the greys are as diverse as the human race. If you talk about the human race, you could talk about so many different flavors of the human. It's the same with the greys, right? So who are your guys?
there would be level 1 greys, but what people don't understand is a planet like Earth is protected, so no one negative from out there can come in, but there is a lot of negative interference from down here. Now, these robot greys that they talk about, these are the PLFs, the programmed life forms that Dr. Stephen Greer talks about. I think that they were initially created for the MILAB, the military abductions, from genetic material taken from the bodies of genuine Zeta people who died in the crashes in America. And these things have been actually bioengineered to appear like real greys. And as far as I know, they are pretty nasty little things, but, you know, they've been bioengineered.
Well, they're probably not nasty. They just don't have any feeling. They're like a robot.
No, that's right. No
so they just do as they're told. They wouldn't be inherently nasty. So I've heard of a lot of people programmed life forms. I've heard of a lot of people talk about being, you know, under the bases and, you know, in the inside of the earth in bases and stuff, and seeing the military with greys. These are probably the greys you're talking about.
Yeah.
They're probably these, what did you call them? Programmed life forms.
Programmed life forms, PLS.
PLS.
They also use holographic imagery in their abductions as well, again of greys, but they're not real greys. A classic example of this was in the Bud Hopkins book Witnessed. I was speaking about this on an interview a couple of weeks ago, and I couldn't think of the name of the book. It was Witnessed. When I think it was called the Brooklyn Bridge incident, where a lot of people driving across the Brooklyn Bridge actually witnessed a woman being floated out of the window of an apartment, surrounded by a couple of greys and taken up in a ship. This was actually, it was actually a holographic image that was generated from down here, part of the trickery of the whole thing. He also, Bud Hopkins in his book also talks about the abduction of the Secretary General of the United Nations, Xavier Perez de Cuellar, I think his name was, that he was abducted by negative rays and threatened that he'd be killed because he was trying to organise a meeting of heads of state who were going to talk positively about contact. Now, again, that was a fake abduction to cause fear. And it's all coming from down here.
So what do they say at this point about the progress of humanity moving towards a more enlightened, broader perspective, a more like the DNA awakening? What do they say now? Like, how are we doing?
Yeah, look, it is happening. I know people get very impatient about the whole thing, but it is happening slowly. All the negative stuff gets put across by the media. When I talk about the negative group down here, you know, we're talking about the media and a lot of the government authorities and church authorities, but people are starting to rebel against all this stuff. You can really see, and all this stuff with the paedophilia and the priesthood, banking organisations laundering money, it's all starting to come up to the surface. Paedophilia and Hollywood, all this is coming out slowly. So people are starting to wake up. You've also got to look at the surveys done by the Free organisation. Have you heard of that? Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. The patron was the late Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon. Now, they've run a wonderful series of surveys, about 4 of them. I've done all of them. And they found that the majority of ET contact is very, very positive. And they also found the spiritual growth that people are undergoing who have been taken up by genuine ETs. Mary Rodwell also talks about apparently scientists are actually finding that there's a third strand of DNA being developed in some of the star children.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This is what we were talking about in the, 20, 25 years ago when I was doing this healing course. Reactivating that third strand of DNA, or what scientists have called the shadow DNA, which they initially thought when they saw it that it was just a mistake in the apparatus that they were looking at it through, the equipment, and then they kept appearing and they were like, well, they couldn't understand it, so they just said, oh, it does nothing. But they found this shadow DNA, this, I don't know, we were talking about the 12-strand DNA. It's like currently we have a 2-strand DNA. Apparently there's like we can go up to 12 strands. You know.
DNA is multidimensional.
Yeah,
At least
absolutely.
12 strands.
At least 12 strands, yeah.
At least 12 strands.
And yeah, all about the, you know, what we were doing in this healing course is we were talking to spirit guides and dead people and looking inside people's bodies and going up and, you know, contacting our higher selves. And, you know, we were flying all over the universe. It was great. I was in my early 30s and we were just like, woohoo. Anyway, it was fabulous.
Sounds like fun.
I remember listening to the woman who was bringing through the course and just saying, oh my God, this is what Jesus did. And I wasn't religious at all, but it just came to me that he knew about all this stuff, you know. It wasn't any big deal to him. He had an expanded consciousness and expanded awareness. And
Exactly.
yeah, these miracle healings I've done miracle healings like he did, just simply because I've expanded my awareness. So it's all possible. And all right, what other questions do I want to ask you about the Greys? I'm fascinated about what happens up on those ships, really. It just, what's the environment like up there?
Very, very clinical. Very clean and clinical. A lot of people have described them, and it's exactly what, you know, as they talk about. Susie Hansen talks about it in her books. I don't know if you remember, she was actually taken into the like the living area for the crew on one of the Grey ships, and she described it, and she described it exactly the way I see it. Actually,
I didn't talk to her about that. I probably heard her talk on other shows, but just tell us what you saw. The living area. What's their living environment like?
Yeah, well, I can basically quote her because it's exactly the same. It's a maze of little sort of tunnels and corridors with arched openings, and it's all very, very white and pure and clean. There's an actual light comes out of the wall as you walk along, and it's got a moulded look to it. Now, ever since I was a child, I've always been fascinated with the architecture of the Greek islands, and I've mentioned this to a few other Greys down here, and they all say the same thing. It reminds us of home. The little archways and the little narrow pathways, and each person has their own room. And the shelf beds, Susie talks about the shelf beds in her books, but I experienced them many, many years ago.
It's very minimalist, isn't it? In that empty,
very minimalist, yes.
bare, completely bare.
Quite a Zen lifestyle.
Very Zen, yeah. They're not into trinkets.
Very Zen.
not into homewares. Very Zen. No, well, I've seen it. I've said this on the show a couple of times, but during the fires and all the animals dying, you know, I was in the shower one day and I was just resting, letting the water just fall over me, and I had this image of this beautiful ship, like this ship.
That's right.
I was talking to, who was I talking to? Oh, Penny Kelly. Yeah, and Penny was saying she saw a ship that was jeweled, and I had to say that this vision I had of this ship, and now I understand that when I get these visions, I'm just connecting with a multi-dimensional aspect of myself that's out of my body, because I can't actually say I'm left my body because I'm in the shower and I'm in my body, but I'm connecting with a part of me that's not in the body, and seeing this ship, it just was stunningly beautiful. And that was my like, oh, how beautiful is this ship? And then I was taken inside, and it was exactly like you described. It was this white, looks plastic, but it's not plastic. You know, it's not cement. I don't want to know what it is, but it's white and it's lit and it's smooth. Yeah, I saw it.
Was that when they were cuddling the animals?
Yeah, and I saw all these Greys cuddling the animals. And what was really hilarious to me at the time, standing in the shower, was that everything was so smooth and white and clean, I don't know, and smooth. And these animals are furry, you know, like kangaroos hopping around in this really pristinely white, smooth environment with these kangaroos hopping around and Greys cuddling koalas. And it just looked hilarious because it was such a contrast between the animal body and the Grey environment, the environment of the ship, you know. And
isn't that beautiful?
Yeah. And there wasn't millions of them. I got the impression that they were just preserving the DNA. I don't know, they'll probably do some regeneration. I was speaking to another wonderful woman, Zoe, probably the last show I did, and And Zoe was saying that, we were talking about why the animals died, and she was saying, well, maybe thousands or hundreds of thousands have died, but there'll be hundreds of thousands that'll come back, and they don't worry about this life and death cycle
That's
like we do.
right. That's right.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but it was interesting that the Greys were sort of preserving, just in case they got wiped out, was preserving the DNA.
Oh, yeah, they've got huge banks of DNA. So any species down here that becomes extinct is protected up there, and they can be reproduced. They can either be brought back here, or if it doesn't suit them, they can be adapted to other planets. This is actually the work I used to carry out in my past life as a Grey.
Really? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I remember doing that, travelling around. We're almost like cosmic gypsies. They're all travellers, going around to all these different planets and collecting things. And we would always contact the soul element of an animal or plant or whatever before taking them. We wouldn't just take them. We'd ask their permission, if they wanted to be part of the project, and taking them back to our home planet and creating environments so that we could observe them. And then if they needed to be settled on another planet, we would work with them to readapt them to be able to do this.
Wow.
Absolutely fascinating.
Fascinating. It's fascinating. I've had Garnet Schulhauser. Do you know Garnet Schulhauser? He is I've had him on the show 6 times. So he was a corporate lawyer. He was contacted basically by a spirit guide who turns up as a homeless man, and then he was given his mission on Earth. And that was to download his spirit guide's message, which was the first book. And then he was taken out of his body at night into his astral form and flown around the universe and the multiverse and Earth and everywhere. And he's just like been everywhere. He's on book 5. And his mission is to just relay what he experiences. One of his journeys, he was told about a second planet that circled Earth like the moon, a small planet that millions of years ago was hit by an asteroid and was knocked out of Earth's orbit, went out into the asteroid belt and exploded, and it's part of the asteroid belt out there. But on this planet was this whole ecosystem. And the Greys, or the ETs, he didn't actually say specifically Greys, he might have. It was a few years ago he told me the story, or I read it in the book actually, took the animals from this planet and the flora, and they put it on Earth, and they put it in Australia. So the reason that we have these animals that are completely different to any other part of the world is because they actually came from another planet.
Yeah,
and I said, why Australia? And he said, because of Uluru. Because Uluru, he called it, was Earth's beacon. And I've always sort of held on to this notion of this Uluru being like a beacon. And to me, it felt like a heartbeat of Earth, so that the animals felt at home on this planet.
Yes.
So all these marsupials that we have, and
that's right.
they come from this other planet. And it just, I had never heard anybody else say this, only Garnet. But it was just fascinating to me, and that had happened all those millions of years ago, and it would explain why we have these unbelievably different animals to any other part of the world.
Yes.
Don't find them anywhere else. Yeah.
That makes huge sense.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then I found out through an Indigenous person online that the Uluru is actually a part of the Pleiades that was kind of...
They have a very strong...
That was put into Earth. It was like, somebody said to me online, it was like the sperm to the egg that was Earth, and it sort of seeded life. So, fascinating. Yes, because I know a lot of the Indigenous people here do feel a strong link to the Pleiades. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So these little animals aren't going to be extinct as as lots of people have been screaming about online. A billion animals have died, but insects, and I think that it's all okay. They might had a bit of a clear out, but it's just probably their time to evolve onto a higher frequency. I mean, that's the bottom line. Everything evolves, everything reincarnates, everything evolves, so nothing ever dies. It's the old thing, the old story of energy in the universe, and the scientific thing about energy cannot be destroyed, it only changes. Exactly. Now, the whole universe is energy, that's the bottom line. Yeah. So nothing in the universe is ever destroyed, it only changes. Just changes form, yeah. So the fires have been a big change of form for many, for many. Somebody was saying that their parents' place burnt down, and but they were these unbelievable hoarders. They could never get anything organised. And I was thinking, it's a bit of a cosmic joke, isn't it? When you think about throwing stuff out and you never do, and you just accumulate more stuff, and then in 1 minute, poof, it's all gone.
Oh my God.
Like, right, now you don't have to organise it. You've thought about it for 30 years. Now you don't have to organise it. Anyway.
I love it.
Okay, so getting back to this agenda, what's happened to these reptarians? Like, where are they now? These?
Oh, they're still here. They're reincarnating. Yeah, they're still here. They're still controlling the earth. They're still reincarnating back down here.
So are they humans? They're humans.
Yeah, they're reincarnating as humans. I think that there are some still in that slightly more reptilian form in the inner earth, which is
okay. And are they evolving?
Oh, everybody evolves eventually.
Are they evolving? I was listening to this young man talk about the law of one, who's coming on the show, actually. Lovely young man who's a spiritual teacher, and he's out there and he's so clear. And when I see these young people coming through, there's quite a few of them. There's a lot of them. I've just seen a few of them who are so clear. They're so tapped in, turned on, tuned in, and they're out there teaching. I feel like there's hope for planet Earth when I see these wonderful young teachers come through. Anyway, he's got big knowledge on the law of one, which are the books I've never read, and I thought, oh, he can come on and talk about it and he can enlighten all of us. And he talked about the evolution of the positive path, and then there's an evolution of a negative path. So it sounds like these reptarians have just evolved along a negative timeline. But he said when you hit sixth density, you can't evolve past that in a negative form. You have to return back to love or back to the source.
That's right.
But we're way before, sixth density, like we're in third density, so we're nowhere near. But are these reptarians still evolving along a negative path, or what?
Some of them are. Some are starting to come onto the side of the goodies. But yeah, there was some.
Shifting gears.
All negativity comes out of fear. Fear is the opposite of love, and love is the positive path. Fear is the negative path. And some of them actually still feed off fear, which is why they're trying to keep humanity in fear. It strengthens them. But our work down here is to try and shift humans past fear, help them to understand that everything is as it should be. And this is where we're at the moment. And by choosing love over fear, and this is this whole Armageddon thing, it's an inner war. It's not an outer religious war. It's an inner war between love and fear. And by overcoming the fear with love, automatically brings protection down for you. And this is what people need to understand for the future, because as quantum physics is proving, we create our own reality through the way we think. So if you want a positive future, you've got to learn to move past the fear and think in loving, positive terms.
Fear.
That's the bottom line.
I was sharing with you personally that we had to postpone this conversation because my daughter had a bit of a incident, bit of a, physical incident. And I think, and I can understand this because it's happened to me too, there's so much fear that we're injected with around health, isn't there?
Yes.
Look, I've been a spiritual hippie most of my life, and when I did all these healing courses and I realized that I have control of my health, I really didn't buy into any of the allopathic conditioning. Except for one day I was on the couch a few years back now, and I had this dreadful pain, like this really sharp pain, which I thought I was going to die. And it was in that moment that I thought, oh, maybe I should go and get tested. And I did, and I was completely clear. And then I asked my mum, and it was probably like I was passing a gallbladder stone or a kidney stone or something. At the time when you're in pain, you don't think to ask, what's happening? You're just like in pain. And so I've just watched this happen with my daughter. She's had this episode and then she's fine, but the fear about what could go wrong. So she's gone through the whole allopathic system. She's gone to the doctor. They've sent her to the emergency. She spent all day in an emergency hospital waiting, only to go and be admitted, more waiting, and then a million tests, and then they still don't know. Like I was telling you.
We can't find anything wrong.
And then lovely young doctor. He was lovely. We were joking with the young doctor. And he's going, well, we could do more tests, and we could do this test, and we could do that test, and we could do this test. And I'm like, what does your gut say? And then I said to him, I see there's a lot of angels around you. And he looked at me like I was completely crazy. He kind of went,
beautiful.
and I said,
Lovely.
I work with a lot of angels. He's like, oh my God, there's a crazy woman. My daughter was so embarrassed. I said, I love shocking people like that.
Oh, isn't that lovely? Me too.
When you know that you're the creator of your reality, even when you experience something like a seizure or, you know, intense pain, you don't have to buy into that fear that we're so conditioned with when it comes to us.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Because 99.9% of the time it's the fear that's causing it. It's not actually something physically wrong.
Exactly.
And if it is something physically wrong, then by changing your way of thinking, you can often overcome it anyway.
Exactly. Look, there was some ray of hope in this whole incident, in that the questions he was asking her, apart from all the physical questions, he was asking her, had she been going through some stress? And, you know, in my books, that's the thing that causes everything. You know, it's the fear, it's the stress. She's been through the fires, she's been through a whole lot of other stuff, you know, and the allopathic system doesn't understand how our emotions and our thoughts affect us, and that you can have an episode when this stress builds up, and you just, and all you need to do is calm down anyway. Just calm down, relax, chill out, and it'll all be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. As we teach in our Reiki seminars, every illness and everything that happens, like negative happening to the body, begins in the energy system, caused by a block or something in the energy. And so, you know, if you can reach it at that level before it becomes a physical symptom, that's the whole key to all these types of healing.
Which obviously the Greys know about. I mean, what's it like, you know, do they get sick? What's their healing like? What happens?
Yeah, some of the ones who aren't on a real high level can, but they do understand. I mean, they're all from higher levels than here. So yes, they understand very much about creating their own reality. Up on the ships, we have the healing bed. So if you're up there and you start feeling off, or say you come off a shift and you're really tired, you've been dealing with difficult humans all night and you come off feeling a bit shaky, which does happen, you go and lie down on the healing bed. And it basically, it attunes your consciousness into the consciousness of the ship and of the rest of the soul group, and clears any blockages that have come up in your energy system.
Oh, I was saying that in the emergency hospital the other day. I said, in the future, there will be this healing bed and you'll just recalibrate your energy system and any physical ailment will just disappear. Yes. And they're looking at me going, uh-huh. And I'm like, yeah.
Again, I remember Susie talking about that in a book, and I think she said that if you come off a difficult shift, you either go along and get something to eat, or you go and lie on the healing bed.
The healing bed. Just recalibrate your energy.
Yeah.
She started to talk about, and maybe you have an understanding of this, the hive mind, not the right word, the collective consciousness of the ship. Like you said, on the healing bed, you plug into the energy of the ship because the ship is conscious. Yeah. And she talked about this area of the ship where it's like this mind that everyone is connected to. Yeah. Do you want to speak a bit about that?
Yes. It's like a group soul, and the ship is part of it. The Greys are very, very closely linked. Down here, when people are putting them down, they talk about, oh, they're a hive mind and there's no free will. Now, that's not right. What the Greys do, they actually operate on God's will rather than free will, to put it into Earth human terms. In that, everything is done for the good of the whole group. So you don't do things selfishly. I mean, sure, you might benefit. There's no reason why you can't do something nice that's going to benefit you, but it benefits the whole group. And the ship is actually a living sentient entity in its own right. And when you go on board the ship, particularly the crew, all link their consciousness into the ship. So we're sort of all operating as one. And how we operate the ship is through our palm chakras, placed on like a control panel. And we channel energy in through our crown chakra, something like Reiki down here, but much, much stronger, travels down the heart meridians and actually into the body of the ship. So this is how the ship works. It's on like 0 point energy, I think they refer to it down here.
And, fascinating. And what's the propulsion of the ship? How does
Basically,
it move?
This energy.
Uh-huh.
The
Consciousness
energy
energy.
through the hands.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's, is it, so how's it moving? Is it moving just with thought? It's just moving with, so they understand they're the creators of their reality. So they just all link mind and then focus on where they want to be, and then bang, you're there.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that how it works?
Yeah, more or less, yes.
You don't actually travel anywhere. You're just...
Sort of, well, you do, but yeah, it's really hard to put into 3D terms. That's probably why Susie didn't go into it.
I know, but I'm doing my darndest. I'm talking to you, I'm talking to my mob, I'm asking them questions, I'm asking you questions, I'm trying to get my puny linear mind around it.
Yeah. And I mean, technology there has grown. I mean, over millennia, it's changed. I think some of the ET groups have used nuclear energy in the past. Some have used solar energy. Some have used all different sorts of energy. But the one that I'm familiar with is just placing the hands on and tapping into the energy through your body. And I think, do you remember Susie mentioned the little shoes everyone wears?
No, she didn't say that on my show. She might have said it on another show. I'll have to get her back. Look, no, what are the shoes?
They're cotton and rubber soles, and they help to ground the energy down through our body into the ship. And the uniforms that we wear also is like an electric conduit that channels the energy into the ship.
So what happens if you don't have the shoes on?
We wouldn't be as effective.
Oh, okay.
The energy would be more dissipated. It's like, I don't know, do you do any sort of hands-on healing?
Well, I used to. I don't so much anymore.
Reiki,
I do with the daughter. That's exactly what I was doing the other day. So I've got to say, yes, I still do it. Yeah.
When we do hands-on healing in Reiki, we hold our fingers together like that. You don't hold your hands out like that, because if you do, the energy can dissipate through the fingers.
Right.
And another thing that one of the great teachers taught us in Reiki, which I had confirmed in a really weird way a few weeks or months later, you hold your hand like that. The Greys call that the peace sign. And it's like a portal for the energy. That's it. Yeah. And where you can on the body, you hold your hands in that position. Because again, it's a portal for the energy and pulls us through stronger.
Now that's really interesting, because I tell you what, pretty much in every interview I do, I find, you don't see my hands, but I find myself sitting here like this, right?
Yep.
And you'll see Bashar does that. He holds it over his solar plexus.
Yes.
I don't hold it over my solar plexus. I hold it further down where my hands rest.
Chakra, yes.
Yeah, and I asked him, I had Daryl on the show years ago, and I said to him, because the mudras just happened spontaneously. I used to do the Buddha mudra. Every time I sat to meditate, I would do this, and then my mudras changed to this. I would just naturally go into this form. And I said, why am I doing that? And he said, you're concentrating the energy. You're kind of focusing the energy. And I went, fascinating. And then he said something that shocked him and me, because after he said it, I saw the shock on his face, because he wasn't channeling at the time. He said, it'll change. And then he went, why did I say that? And I thought, well, okay, it'll change. It hasn't changed yet. But I sit here with that mudra, that same shape, that shape. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Yes, we were told or taught to hold it on our sacral chakra, because, of course, sacral chakra is, the cauldron. It's the seat of the key energy, or the chi energy.
Right. So that's where I hold it. I hold it over my sacral.
Yeah.
And not my solar plexus, as Bashar does. But then I'm not channeling it, per se, when I'm talking to people.
Yeah. He might hold it over his solar plexus.
Yeah, he does. Because he always has his hands up higher.
Yeah. Yes. Because in Reiki, we try and hold it on whatever chakra we're working on. We try and hold that position. Yeah.
Oh, fascinating. What other tips have they given? What else would they like to tell us
look,
humans?
they taught us a whole wonderful aura cleanse.
Okay, let's talk about that.
This is 13-step aura cleanse. We've actually got it up
13
on
steps.
YouTube.
Okay, it's on YouTube. I know your channel's fabulous. I have to tell people to go to your YouTube channel. Now, who's been interviewing me? Is that Helen?
No, that's another friend, Paula Jane. She's
She's
helping me.
wonderful. So you and her have been doing a series of healing talks, and it's wonderful on your
question and answer
question
sessions.
and answers. Yeah.
Paul has actually studied religion very deeply. She went to the local Catholic university and earned her THL degree, her theology degree. But she's very, very open. She's interested in all this stuff, absolutely fascinated. So she's got a very sharp mind. So she comes up with all these amazing questions. So we thought, okay, we'll do this series. We call it Just Love, because I mean, that's the bottom line. It's all just love that we're putting up on YouTube.
Yeah.
And that's their channel that I sent to you.
Oh, beautiful.
The last one I put up, which I think was the next one I've got to put up, episode 19. I'm going to put the YouTube link down the bottom, so if people want to link in, they can. And then I do the aura cleanse.
So the question that was coming up, but I think we've just answered it, is that what do they want? So you've done all this for so many years. You've done your meditation and your Reiki and your Qigong and your Tai Chi. What do they want you to do now? Because you've been at it for a while.
Basically keep on with it. I'm not sure exactly where I need to go from here, but I know that it'll unfold, so I'll just take it a day at a time. And
how often do you speak to them? Are they just like constantly there in your head?
They're just around, If ever I need to ask anything, I just tune in.
Yeah.
Appropriate for me to know, they tell me. Sometimes they might be a day or two before they get back, but they always end up getting back.
And what is their spiritual evolution like? Are they telepathically connected to the consciousness of the ship, the collective consciousness, the group soul? But what about their higher selves? How does that work?
Okay, what I need to do to explain that is explain the human ladder that we were taught by my great teacher Maris. And Oris, that's fine, I'll get in trouble if I don't mention Oris. Oris was the one who first gave it to us, and then Mars clarified it. We were told about this, Helene and I, and Helene's daughter Kira, we talk about in the Zeta message. We were given this teaching back in about 2001. The Greys call it the human ladder, and what it is, it's the evolutionary path of all humans through the cosmos or through the universe. Starting with level 1, which is where planet Earth is, so we can access about 10% of our potential consciousness, and we gradually evolve up through the levels to level 10, where we can access 100% of our consciousness. So it's like 10% first level, 20% second level, 30%, etc. Now, the majority of the Greys are from level 5 and upwards. They're not mammalian humans, they're insectoid humans, but they're also very closely linked in with the nature spirit kingdom, the elementals. Whose physical manifestation on Earth is through the insect kingdom, so there's a real link there. They also work very closely with what humans call angels, which are very, very high energy, right up on the top of the ladder. So some of the Greys are right up at level 8, level 9, and then sort of eventually evolve into the angelic kingdom at level 10.
Okay, so interesting, because I've been listening to this whole Law of One stuff as put out by this young spiritual teacher, and he was talking about densities, and he said exactly the same thing. He just called them densities, and he just called them different, numbers, just giving them levels. I think he said we go up to 8 densities was the top density, but I think that the numbers and the levels are sort of irrelevant. That's just human speak, really.
Yeah, and also, see, what happens is non-polarized energy right up at the top, so it's probably polarized up to about level 8 or 9, and then it becomes
he said that your higher self is your group soul, is your collective soul, a bit like the collective soul of the ship, and it exists at the 6th density in the Law of One vernacular. So that might be it might be a different level, same information, but a different level in the way that in the vernacular that you've been given, and in the way it's been explained to you. But so that your higher self is group soul. So you'd have to be a group soul, because imagine if you're grey, human,
Yeah.
past life, future life,
Yes.
you know, like there's a lot of us.
Look, it's all one. This is the key to it. It's all one. And
Yeah.
this is one of the things he said. He said, we are manifesting a life on all levels of the human ladder, all in the now.
All at the same time. And so your higher self is the sort of combination of all that.
That's the God essence.
He said that it exists at the sixth density. So if we're in third density, he said that it exists at the sixth density, and then beyond that we start to merge more into the oneness, and the higher self kind of becomes less,
that sort of makes sense. Yeah.
less prevalent, less less a part of the.
Maybe at that sixth or seventh level, the higher self is still sort of slightly individualized, and then it moves towards oneness. Because the ET use for God is oneness or source.
Yeah.
Where we're heading.
Okay, so back to that question about their higher self. Is that group soul that they all connect into in the ship, is that their higher self?
It's not quite. It sort of is and sort of isn't. It's part of the higher self.
So it's another aspect of the higher self. All right.
Aspect of the higher self. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've had a big teaching from my mob all about this, but they teach me in visuals. And who was I speaking to? Zoe on the last show I did. She's the same. She gets taught in visuals, and there's just no way. It's like I haven't got a hope in hell to try and explain the visuals that I get. Like I can see it, and it perfectly makes sense, but it's 3D. It's in color. I'm inside it. It's like it's showing me everything, and but I could, to get on YouTube and try and tell people what I was, it'd be almost impossible.
Same thing happened with us with the crop circle, the human ladder, because leads to a crop circle. The human ladder, because I wanted to illustrate it in the Zeta message book,
right?
And both Kira, Helene's daughter, and I were both trying to draw it from a description. And we just could not get it down on paper. So we jokingly put a thought out, how about giving us a crop circle to illustrate it? And God love them, they did.
Oh, can you point us in that direction? What's the crop circle?
It's on the cover of the Zeta message.
It's on the cover of the Zeta message.
Yeah, the Milk Hill crop circle from 2001.
Okay.
August, I think it was, 2001.
Well, one of the most fascinating things I ever saw was when I first saw the Thrive movie, years ago. And that movie Thrive?
Yeah.
What on Earth Will It Take? Foster Gamble, he's actually putting out the sequel to it, which is coming out this year. Anyway, so in that movie, he turns crop circles through computer, graphics. Yeah. He turns them into a 3D thing.
Yes.
And it's just... like you see the crop circle in the 3D thing, and you see energy systems and vortexes, and you go, oh, but that if I could get some sort of computer graphic person to kind of get in my head and see what I see and put it would be beautiful. Someone will do it one day. Someone will do it.
Look, it'll be done one of these days.
It'll be done one of these days.
That'd be lovely if once you get it in your head, if you could project it onto paper, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't that be great?
Like a photographic image.
Just go, I know. But it was a while ago, they showed me how all the souls, group souls, like all the progression, it was sort of like a big sun in the middle, and then all these aspects coming off, and then on each arm were different levels of your experience, the end level being human, and then your astral level, and then another level, and so just in this one form we have all these multiple levels, and then that's just one life. But it was just like this sun, and it was moving, and it was amazing.
It sounds like the human ladder.
Yeah, I'm sure it was the human ladder. I'll have to go and I'll put the crop circle up on the YouTube so people can see the image of that crop circle.
Yeah, because it's 3D, because I could never understand it when they first gave it to us. The human ladder has 10 levels, but the crop circle only has 6 spirals.
Right.
It's because it's 3D. There are deeper levels as well. And I didn't know this until I was writing E.T. Presence on Earth, and they gave me more information then for that book to explain it.
Okay. So another question that I've sort of skipped over, I had in my mind before, a lot of people wonder about the abductions. okay, so there's a few things that happen. There's the MyLab abductions, and then, as you say, you've got those grey looking, what do you call them again?
The PLFs.
The PLFs.
Yes.
And so they seem to be more negative. But then there are a lot of contact that are seen as abductions, where people are terrified just because they're in their puny linear minds, human minds, and they're like, it's nothing that they've ever been. Penny Kelly was talking about her experiences, and she was up on a ship, and she had experienced for years the fear. And one day she said that she had sort of mastered the human experience, and she was feeling really cocky, and then she was taken, but she had maintained that sort of like, I've got this, and she had it as she was having this abduction experience. And she said she was with a whole group of humans that were all going, oh, oh. And she's going, oh, you fools, calm down. But she couldn't calm them. She couldn't calm them down.
Gee, we could use her up there.
Why is this happening? Are these people like you just all dual souls? Or like, what's going on with the so-called abductions?
Most of them, I think, are actually humans who are ready to have an upgrade, to have their DNA fixed up. That's what the majority of them are.
Right.
And the ones down here, like Susie and myself and a few others who are dual souls, we're here to help them, because we've got a foot in both camps.
Right.
I can't remember what Susie said in her book, but I know as a child I went through a lot of fear until I came to understand. So I can understand it. I've got empathy with people who are going through fear.
Yeah.
And I think that's helped me to bridge the gap between the two. Yeah. So I would never say to someone, oh, don't be stupid, because I understand, yes, it is scary. And it actually has a physiological effect on the body. Like, even after I got used to them and was fine with it, on one night, I went down the back in my astral form, and my teacher was standing at the bottom of the stairs, and he's a tall grey mantid. And he was actually in his mantid form this particular night. And I stood in front of him, and he was towering over me. He was very, very tall, and I felt this clutch of fear. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, it was like we merged, and it was okay. But just the sight of this being.
I have never heard that, tall grey mantid. So when you say he's a tall grey, so he can shapeshift, he can appear as a grey or a mantid?
Well, mantids are part of the greys because they're insectoid. When I use the term grey, I'm just talking about all the insectoids as opposed to mammalian humans or whatever. Uh-huh. So yeah, they're greys as well. Some of them are like more.
So you were looking at this giant prey mantis looking being. What do they look like? So they don't look like prey mantises that we have here on Earth. They don't look like giant insects. They're more humanoid, right?
Right, yeah. It depends. Sometimes they show themselves as human. He does sometimes. Well, not human, but I mean grey, typical grey, the long face and the big slanted eyes. But on this particular occasion, he was showing himself very mantid looking with those huge eyes and the little triangular face going down the sort of a beak thing.
Yep.
I think he was just sort of mainly showing me, hey, look, this is a form I take sometimes, don't be scared. But of course I panicked a bit.
Was it like 10 foot tall?
About that, about 9 foot I think it was.
And what do their bodies look like? Are they
very, very thin? Some of them have like a chitinous sort of insectoid on the outside of the body. The ones that I know have they feel like dolphins to touch.
Sort of rubbery.
Softish rubbery, yeah. The hands feel completely human. They're not freezing cold. They're not hot.
So these are the mantid hands or the grey hands?
The grey hands.
So they feel warm to touch.
Sometimes the mantids have these feeler things. But
they're kind of like insecty type looking.
Yeah, I haven't had a lot of experience feeling them, but I have with the grey hands, because on one occasion this teacher, when he was appearing in a more human grey form with the big eyes and the dolphin-y skin, he was giving me a mouth and throat massage, and his fingers were going right down into my throat because I have a bit of a jaw problem, like a lot of greys down here do, because we don't use physical speech up on the ship. So I have a little bit of trouble with the jaw. I haven't got the ability to open my mouth like a normal human, and I haven't even got the same number of teeth that a normal human has. And he was wanting me to speak out more. So he was giving me a mouth massage, and these long, long, long fingers going right down inside my throat. and yet it wasn't uncomfortable. I wasn't choking or anything, but they felt just like normal human fingers, except you were pressing really hard.
Right. Look, I remember talking to Sherry Wild a few years back about her experiences. Is she great? Such a great speaker. And what fascinated me about Sherry was that for so many years she was in denial. For so many years, like the strength of the human mind when it wants to believe something that is not true, like, and one of the things that cracked me up was her guy Da, she calls him, as you call Ray.
That's right, Da.
She was doing a screaming, she was abducted and carrying on, and he goes, "You do this every time. When are you going to stop?" Like every time they took her up, she would do the fear thing, the screaming and the yelling. He was like, God, they get that we have this forgetfulness, which is endlessly frustrating for people who know that we have the forgetfulness and still have the forgetfulness, even though we know it. Yeah. So they must be patient to an extent, but then I suspect after thousands maybe of experiences, and then she's still doing that. Anyway.
All you can do up there is just knock them out.
Yeah, like an animal that's panicking, and then you just sedate it. I know, we're like them. We're like the animals to them, aren't we?
And you feel so sorry for a person who's in a state like that. Their body goes into like a physiological shock, and you think, oh, God, are they going to have a heart attack or something?
Yeah. And who was it too? Denise Lynn? Have I got her name right? No, Lynn. Oh, gosh, I've gone. Do you know who I'm talking about? She wrote a book called From Fear to Love.
Yeah.
Denise Lynn. Oh gosh, anyway, she said that she was doing the fear too, and then one day she said had a bit of a like she flung her arms out because they didn't sedate her. I think there was like one time where she was calm, and so the more calm she was, the less sedated she was, and then she had a bit of a fright. She flung her arm out and she hit one of the greys, and it went flying across the room.
Oh, no.
And she felt so sorry. And she said, he was so soft. When I hit him, he was so soft. And she felt so sorry for him. But I think that she had this real heart opening at that point and realised that these are, benevolent beings, and she had nothing to be fearful of. And at that point, I think that was her awakening into that understanding that it was all good. And then they stopped sedating her, and she would cruise around the ship and chat to them, and they would take her on, tours of the ship and show her things. And
she lost her fear, and meantime, the grey she hit probably becomes terrified of humans after that.
Well, let me ask you about that, Judy. Do greys have the ability to be fearful? Because I don't think they have the range of emotion that we have, do they?
The emotions are deeper. There is a race of greys who originated on Earth that Bashar talks about, who were ant people. And yes, they do have trouble with their emotions. And the other greys, the off-planet greys, are trying to help them. They're trying to balance them, bring their emotion back, and calm Earth human emotions down. So that's why there's this hybrid program going on. But the off-planet greys, yes, they do. But because they're insectoid, they haven't got the musculature in their faces to be able to express emotion. Emotion is an energy, but they can't physically express it. On a deeper level, they feel it. They
feel it. Do they have because I've heard that, here on Earth we have this variety, this huge range of emotion. Therefore, we can experience this depth of depression. Where a lot of higher evolved societies don't have that same range. So they can get upset, but they don't really go into that whole depth.
No, they don't experience the real low emotions, but they experience higher emotions.
The higher ones,
Yeah, I'm aware of this. When I'm working through my grey form, that the level of unconditional love is just beyond words.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely beautiful. Total unconditional love, compassion, patience and all. Far more when I'm in my human form. I mean, I try and practice as well as I do, as well as I can. But as a grey, I can feel it so much stronger.
Isn't that interesting?
And the sense of humour is deeper too.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's so
It's like
fascinating.
a childish sense of fun. You know, the old thing said in the Bible, you know, you must become again as a little child in order to enter the kingdom of heaven. That's what
Yeah, the
that's about.
children will inherit the earth.
The further up
Yeah.
you go, the more childlike and, you know, sense of fun and humour comes in.
Be like little children in order to enter the kingdom of heaven. Yeah, something like that. I'm not religious, don't quote
Yeah,
me, but
that's right.
I do remember a few of those things being thrown around. Yeah, isn't that interesting? So they're like that. And many gurus are like that too. The Dalai Lama,
Yes,
so
yes,
childlike and innocent and
yeah,
and loving and yeah, beautiful. So who
yeah.
knew that greys were like that? Because you can't, can they smile? Like as you say, they don't have the musculature in their
No, they
faces.
can't. It's all in the eyes, all the expressions in the eyes. The jaw
Hmm.
is fixed, which is why they can't chew, and a lot of us down here have trouble with the jaw. The jaw is fixed.
The jaw
And
is
when they
fixed.
eat, they can put something in their mouth, so like they have like a wafer or a pudding substance, or they can place it on their skin, but they
Yeah.
can't chew food. So of course they're not. They don't eat meat. They're vegetarian.
Yeah, they probably
They
have
can't chew.
mostly liquid. We've been yakking for about an hour and a half. I didn't realize how fast the time was going. Okay, so the last question I want to ask you is what do they say about our climate? What's going on
Um,
with the climate?
Oh, look, my teacher sent a whole long message through about that the other day. What he was saying, I'll just try and encapsulate it. He said because Earth plane humanity has been so strongly patriarchal for so long, it's thrown the balance of the planet out because we're part of planet Earth. We're intrinsically linked in with nature, and so this is behind a lot of the unnatural heating up of the planet because yang polarity represents heat. Yin and yang are simply polarities, they're opposites. So yang is hot, yin's cold. Yang's day, yin's night. Yang is male, yin is female.
That's fascinating, Judy. I've
Right
never
through
heard it
nature.
expressed
And
like that.
because of the over patriarchalness of the planet, it's reached a level of complete imbalance, and that's what's causing climate problems. And
Okay,
this is
so
the
it's
reason why we're having cold winters as well, because planet Earth herself trying to bring it back into
she's
balance.
trying to balance. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was listening to someone sent me a cryon channeled message, and he said that what we call climate change will be known as climate cycles, that we're going to experience in the next few years some of the hottest and coldest weather patterns we've ever seen on Earth
Yeah.
since we've been recording the weather,
Yeah.
until she rebalances. But obviously, this balance that Gaia is going through is intrinsically linked to our consciousness, because how could it not be?
Yes.
So, in that respect, we are affecting climate change, but it's not as most of the people think through the carbon emissions. I mean, they're playing a part, but they're not
Not the
the
whole thing.
whole picture. Yeah,
No,
it's
that's
the
just one of the
consciousness.
symptoms.
So this patriarchal consciousness is heating up the planet. I have never heard it put like that. That's
We
amazing.
actually put that message up on the YouTube clips, the Just Love YouTube clips.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I can't remember which one it was, but there's a little explanation of each one.
So the best way to combat climate change, or no, let me rephrase that. The best way to help the climate shifting,
Balance.
the climate balance, the climate cycles,
Yeah.
is to be more loving, more feminine, more
Yes.
empathic, more
Yes.
intuitive, more feminine,
Yes. Yes.
and teach as many people as you can to be more heart-centered, empathic, intuitive, feminine,
Yep.
mothering type energy. It's just
Yes.
to
Yes.
spread that feminine energy across the planet.
Yes. Yeah. More nurturing and
More
compassion
nurturing,
rather than
compassion.
warmongering and aggression. Yeah.
And that's the best way to combat climate change. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a fabulous message. I love that. That's just the best.
Yeah, we were excited when he gave it to us too.
Well, I'm doing well because I worry, as I put plastic in the bin and I go, oh, the plastic, the plastic. The ETs have said to me that they have the technology to eliminate all the pollution on Earth like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're not going to do it because, like you say, they're on the sidelines cheering us on. They say, you can do it, you can do it. We'll show you how, but you can do it. It's not up to us
Yeah.
to do it. It's up to us to guide you guys to do it.
Exactly. Exactly.
So that makes me feel a little better when I see all the plastic crap everywhere. But at the same time, I still worry about all that plastic and pollution and stuff like that. But I'm doing my darndest to help climate change by being loving and feminine. spreading that energy.
Trying to recycle and things.
Oh, that's such a beautiful. Any last messages from our ET family before we say goodbye?
I'll just put something down. I'll just find it because I can never remember things. I used to do a series of book signings around the different bookshops many, many years ago. And people used to say, look, what's the message that the ETs want to have put across? And I'd try and go into this long explanation. And one day when I got home, I said, look, come on, help me, just sum it up for me. And what it was they said, to sum up what they've taught us, to understand our universe in terms of oneness, to understand our universe in terms of energy, and to understand ourselves in terms of oneness and energy, thus enabling us to choose love over fear.
There you go, in a nutshell.
In a nutshell.
Choose love over fear. So next time you get fearful because you get some diagnosis from the doctor, go, no worries, mate, I can sort this out.
Yeah, she'll be right, mate.
She'll be right, mate. I can sort this. I am the creator of my reality. I choose love over fear.
Yes.
With an Australian accent. Oh, darling one, thank you so much for chatting with me. It's been
an absolute pleasure, Karen. Lovely. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Well, that was a lot of fun with Judy. Oh, that was fascinating. I was fascinated the whole time I had that conversation with Judy. Not that I'm never not fascinated. I'm always fascinated with everybody. But I have to say the climate change thing was the thing that really got me. In order to help climate change be more feminine, even if you're a guy, accentuate your feminine side. What's your femininity? It's your empathy. It's your nurturing. It's your intuitive psychic abilities. It's your ability to tune into frequency and energy. Yes, that too much patriarchal energy is raising the heat of the planet. I had never heard that before, but it makes perfect sense. Isn't it yin and yang? If masculine energy is a heat energy and feminine energy is a cool energy, wow, that's amazing. That's how we help climate change. Amazing, beautiful message. It was lovely to chat with Judy. Just beautiful. Just beautiful. And it sounds like there's so much information in her books. We just hit the tip of the iceberg with some of it. But I haven't actually read any of the books, so I just didn't get time to read them. I don't think she sent them to me actually, but I'm sure she would if I asked her. But sounds like if you're interested in understanding the grey connection on Earth and the whole thing that we spoke about, the books sound amazing. So if you want to buy the books, I'll have the affiliate links to the Amazon on the website, karenswain.com/Judy Carroll. And you can get them there and you can contribute to the show by buying the books on our affiliate links. So yeah, fascinating. As I say, this young teacher that I've been watching on YouTube is coming on the show, young, handsome boy who's very clear as a spiritual teacher. When I see people like him coming forth, putting themselves out there, I think the world's in good hands because he's getting a lot of traction. He especially amongst his generation, or maybe everybody, but he's getting a lot of traction on YouTube. And he's doing amazing work, just wonderful. I don't know when he's coming on the show, May, I think. But I was watching some of his YouTube clips last night. His name is Aaron, Aaron. Can't remember his last name, starts with an A. Anyway, I'll have the link underneath. Thanks again for listening and watching. And, the normal, lots of people coming up, join the Inner Sanctum. Zane Daniels is coming on this month. Where are we? February, next month, March. I don't know. We had Blair. We had Blair on this month, and Tabash, 2 for the price of 1. That was so much fun speaking with Blair, Styra, and Tabash. And I've just put up the highlights on YouTube and on the audio platforms of our conversation. Some of the conversation we had with Blair in the Inner Sanctum. He was great. Tabash was amazing. Tabash tuned in to a few of the people online and zeroed in on them and gave them all this information like a mini reading. It was really cool. They were happy. And so join us if you want to have these conversations on a more personal level in the Inner Sanctum and meet some of the people I speak to and meet me. And or if you don't want to join our groups, have a personal session. It'll be fun. We'll have a great time. I'll tune into your mob. I'll tune into my mob. Lots of information, lots of healing, all good. Love you all, and remember to buy the book Awaken by Death. I will see you again soon. Bye for now.